Welcome to the To Be Honest podcast. Today I am talking with Amy Kaur, who is an alumna of San Jose State University, where she studied business administration with a concentration in marketing. Her interest in behavioral health started back in 2016 when she was at an event held by the San Jose State chapter of the national organization called Active Minds. There, she was informed about their mission on destigmatizing the topic around mental health and being a mental health advocate. She then became the publicity officer for Active Minds at SJSU and had the opportunity to attend two of the Active Minds national conventions representing San Jose State. She has a passion for helping people in any way that she can and hopes to continue in changing the conversation around mental health. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I want to get started by asking you, to be honest, how are you doing today? And I want to preface this with telling our audience that we are recording this the day after the general election. So I feel like we all may be feeling a little more anxious and stressed out than usual. But to be honest, how are you personally doing today?
To be honest, I am pretty scared and nervous. I think the past few weeks surrounding the presidential election has been pretty nerve-wracking, to say the least. But I'm hoping that, this feeling of anxiety can calm down by the end of the week. And, I'm just hoping for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good attitude to have. I know it's really hard to be positive right now, but I feel like that's the one thing we can do is kind of to take care of ourselves and just kind of stay in a positive mindset.
Right, right.
That's a good way to look at it. So would you mind sharing a bit about your experience with mental health?
Yes, of course. So I think I started realizing that my mental health was dwindling by the end of my freshman year and kind of the beginning of my sophomore year. During spring break of 2016, I experienced a pretty traumatic event. And it was an event that I really couldn't just, shake out of. And I was completely lost. And even 4 years later, I have so much difficulty just talking about it. And still a lot of people in my life don't really know what I experienced. And like I said, I was completely lost. I didn't know how to tell my friends, my professors, even my manager at work. And I think I did a pretty good job at hiding my feelings because I don't think really anybody suspected anything was really wrong. And that's kind of when I started distancing myself from my friends, wasn't really hanging out with them. And I just really wanted to be in my own little world. And even with my siblings and my mom, it was still something I couldn't really talk about. It was kind of like I lost my voice. And I always played along with saying, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. Anytime anyone ever asked me like, oh, how are you doing? And that's kind of when I knew that I should probably see a counselor and start going to therapy. And because of Active Minds and going to therapy at San Jose State, that's kind of when I started seeing the signs of withdrawal and my friends not really feeling like themselves, because I went through that same exact thing. And that's kind of how I was able to navigate conversations about mental health with my friends. And, in the beginning, talking with them, it was the same response as mine, like, oh, I'm doing fine, I'm doing okay. But just reassuring them that I'm there for them anytime, anywhere, any place. I'm always here if they need to talk, kind of just pivoted that to where my friends and I were more comfortable with each other talking about our depressive episodes and our mental health.
Yeah, I think that's so relatable. I think a lot of times we do kind of mask our feelings. Like if someone asks us how we're doing, we're just going to say we're okay. But deep down, we may be experiencing something else. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think that definitely was the hardest part, trying to hide everything, because it's not, just one day that you're not feeling okay. Sometimes it's days, weeks, and even that really takes a toll.
Definitely. Was there a specific reason you felt like you couldn't reach out to family or friends immediately, or?
I think I was just scared, and I just really didn't know how to. It was kind of like, you get into that state where like, oh, I think I'm ready to talk about it, but then you just freeze up. It's kind of like, I just don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how they're going to react, because I think one thing that's really important to point out is a lot of people when you're feeling sad or you're feeling down, everyone's like, oh, it's just one bad day. Or, that typical saying, like, just smile, you'll feel better. And I think that's what I was afraid of, that I didn't want someone to say that to me, because I think that was going to make me feel more irritable and not want to reach out to people.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And yeah, and I think our society has this notion that you can just like kind of pick yourself up by your bootstraps,
Right.
So people think it's just like an immediate switch that you can just be like, oh, I'll be happy tomorrow.
Right. Like it's on and off. Like one day I'm going to be sad, the next day, oh yeah, I'll just put on a happy song and then I'm just good to go. And that's really not the case sometimes.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. So when you were first experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression, I know you kind of mentioned like withdrawal, but were there other, or withdrawing from your friends and family, but were there other symptoms that you experienced, and did you know what was happening?
Yeah. So my first experience with anxiety was actually my sophomore year. So the beginning of 2016, actually fall of 2016, sorry. And it was after the results of one of my bio exams. And I like to say I'm pretty passionate about science, specifically biology. Like I felt like that was really my calling in high school. So I came to San Jose State. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to major in bio and I wanted to be a cosmetic scientist eventually. And that was my plan. That was my future. And I couldn't wait to leave college and start doing that. But because I did so poorly, all I could dwell on was the future. Like I had this plan and everything was falling through the cracks. Like nothing was going to plan. I couldn't figure anything out and everything was just tumbling down and I had no idea what to do, because all in my head I could think about was like not being a cosmetic scientist. Like, what am I going to do? What does the future hold for me? I don't think I have any other passions, and my mind was just racing all the time. Like even in class, like I would attend every lecture, every lab, but I was never paying attention. I couldn't sit still. Like I was always thinking about something. My heart was always racing. I had such a lot of trouble sleeping. And I had to listen to music, like really slow, mellow music, like Adele or Coldplay, to help me fall asleep. But even sometimes that wouldn't work. My heart was always beating so hard and so fast that I thought it was going to rip out of my chest. Like I could always feel my heartbeat, like just ringing all the time, and never really had the motivation to complete what I was striving for. Like I would complete assignments, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to do. It was kind of just like, I'm just trying to get it over with. And nothing really made sense physically. Like I was present, but my mind was always on something else. And it was always on like, I don't think I had the ability or capability to even pass biology. And I really didn't know what I was feeling until I actually went to CAP Center at San Jose State, which is Counseling and Psychology Services Center, and I saw a pamphlet about anxiety, and I'm like, oh, like what's that? You always hear about like test anxiety or social anxiety, but I didn't really know what those really meant. So I was like flipping through the pamphlet and I was like, wow, like that's exactly what I'm experiencing. Like I am facing anxiety. So that's kind of where like everything kind of clicked for me. I was like, okay, so I know what I'm feeling. Now I know how to find the resources for it.
Yeah. How did you feel? Was it like a sense of relief when you found you could identify what you were feeling as like a specific diagnosis, or
Definitely
how did that make you feel?
Yeah, definitely was, because I think at some point I just thought it was quote unquote normal to feel like this. I'm like, oh, I'm a sophomore, like everybody gets bad grades and, sometimes people's plans don't follow through. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just normal. Maybe it's just a phase that, maybe the next exam is going to be like a little bit better. But it was so persistent that I couldn't really focus on anything else. And that's just where I was like, wow, like this is affecting me to the point where I really can't focus on anything else.
Yeah, I think that's so common, especially I think we talked about before on our call, when people transition from high school to college, or even like transitioning between college years, sometimes it can be really difficult. So if someone is in that transition phase, do you have any advice for someone who may be experiencing anxiety or depression?
Yes, definitely try to find as many resources as you can. Of course, colleges have a lot of resources, and sometimes therapy doesn't work for everyone. I know I never got to experience group therapy, but at San Jose State, there's different group therapy sessions if you have like social anxiety, general anxiety. And even with your insurance, like medical insurance, there's a lot of resources that you can find, and also community resources. So while I was working with Active Minds, I was introduced to a California organization called NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Health illnesses. And so it focuses on resources and helping individuals of all walks of life. And another California organization is called Each Mind Matters, and that's kind of the California mental health movement. And there's a lot of resources. So for someone who has mild anxiety, there's different courses you can take through colleges, and also within the insurance realm, and with these community organizations.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it sounds like you did your research to figure out what was in your community. So I think that's really great.
Oh, sorry. One also thing is also to really have a strong support group. It doesn't necessarily have to be like your family, your friends, but it could be like coworkers, even just a mix of both or all of them. And I think that's really important. I think without some sort of support group, I probably would have been in a really different state right now. And I know it's really hard to talk about what you're going through just in general. I know for me, it's like, it's really, really hard to say like, yeah, I'm not feeling okay, or like, I'm not feeling myself. But having that support group kind of makes everything a little bit better. And it makes you think about, it's okay that I'm not feeling 100% me. And sometimes you just really need someone to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've talked about this on other episodes of the podcast, but I think a lot of times we feel like we may be a burden to those we love and care about, but so we don't want to tell them how we're actually feeling or what we're experiencing, but those are the people that you should talk to the most.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they want to hear how you're feeling, and they want to help you, and that will never be a burden to anyone else.
Right. And I think that's like one of the biggest hurdles to jump over, because even when you are ready to talk about what you went through, it's still that scary feeling like, oh, I don't know how that person's going to react, or what if they're not, what if they don't know if they can handle what I'm saying? And I think that's definitely the hardest part. Like once you can get over that fear, everything becomes a little bit easier, and it's a lot easier to talk about what you're going through and how your friends can help you with that.
When you were experiencing anxiety, I know you mentioned seeking help. Were there other things that you did specifically that helped ease those symptoms?
Yes. So one of the first things was watching The Office. So
Awesome.
I am an avid fan of The Office, and that was really something that helped me through my traumatic event and trying to kind of help me creating a safe space for myself. I started watching it towards the end of my freshman year and the beginning of my sophomore year, and that's something that I've always gravitated towards, and I always gravitate towards too now. Anytime I felt like an overwhelming feeling that I couldn't really shake out, or I had a really bad day at school, I would just open Netflix and just watch The Office. It was something that just made me feel so much at ease and just made me feel like I was okay. It was kind of like my own little world. And it wasn't just a pastime for me. It was really similar to a coping mechanism, a place that I really felt safe. But now I feel like I've grown to better mechanisms to help myself. So I still do watch The Office. Like that's my passion. That's my love. But I moved on to like little changes in my lifestyle. So I started yoga, a little bit of meditation, and definitely putting limits on social media. I didn't know the effect that social media had on my mental health. And I realized that one of my triggers was comparing myself to others. So like everywhere I looked, there was always someone who got like a better job, their dream internship, or, got a better grade than me. And it was really amplified through social media. So I really had to take a step back and realize that social media was really dwindling my mental health. And I had to place limits on Instagram, and I added like blocking website extension on my browsers to prevent me from scrolling endlessly through LinkedIn and Facebook. And I feel like it really did help, and definitely not comparing yourself to others is much easier said than done. But I think the little steps really count, and it's the effort that you take that really counts.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I am guilty of often scrolling through social media way too often. But like there are benefits to social media, but it's true that you do, like, without even realizing it, like, you're comparing yourself to whatever you're looking at. It's just pictures, but it can have a negative impact on your mental health. So.
Yeah.
And I also have a bone to pick with Netflix for taking The Office off.
I was really, really upset. I think they announced it about like 2 years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I have enough time. I can watch it like a few more times, like the entire series. And now it's about to be 2021, and they're like, yeah, you know, NBC's Peacock is gonna take it. And I'm like, oh my God, like Netflix is The Office is my life, and I don't even know. Now I really have to buy like this Peacock just to watch The Office.
Do you have a favorite character?
Oh my God. So I love this question, because if it was like a fake character, it would be like the child of Michael Scott and Kelly Kapoor, honestly. But I think like generally I really relate to Kelly Kapoor. Not just the fact that we're both Indian, but she's just so like not typical, but when I watch her, I'm like, I totally see myself doing that, like all the time. She's just so relatable. And I think Mindy Kaling as a character, or the person who plays Mindy Kaling, she's really relatable. Like, I watched her on her own show, The Mindy Project, and I was like, she cracks me up so much, and I really see myself like being her, you know? It's something so like, I don't know, she's like the exaggerative, the super dramatic person that I've always wanted to be, and I'm like...
I love her. Yeah, I follow her on Instagram.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I just love, like, everything she does is kind of like quirky, but like personal. I don't know. I love her. I watch. Every year I watch the Mindy Project, like on a schedule. Like I think it's like every February I watch the Mindy Project from start to finish.
She says things that are so like so me, or so, you know, I can't even really put it into words. But I'm like, this is something I can see people in my office, or like, you know, people around me doing or saying, and they're just so funny, because half the time they're so out of the ordinary. I'm like, this is so hilarious.
Well, shout out to Mindy Kaling.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about your participation in Active Minds. Would you mind telling everyone what that is, and how you got involved with Active Minds?
Yes, I would love to. So Active Minds is a national organization that is helping change the conversation around mental health and increase mental health awareness. And we've seen it in society for, I don't know, like hundreds of years. Mental health is such a taboo topic that it's really difficult for people to talk about, and we really want to change that. So many people suffer in silence because of stigma, and no one should have to fight battles alone. And I was introduced to Active Minds because at our library, they held an event called Puppy Therapy. So you kind of just like, you know, go in a line, you play with these puppies, and they asked if I wanted to sign up for the newsletter. And I wasn't really thinking much about it, because she just said Active Minds, but I didn't really know what it was. So I just signed up. But then I started looking at their emails. I'm like, oh, wow, like this is really interesting. Like I would love to be a part of it. And then I was a part of it for about a year. And then they had officer openings. So I applied to be a publicity officer. So that's definitely how I got a lot more involved. And I was able to attend their conferences. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity, because it really opened my eyes about knowing the signs of, you know, suicide, how to talk to people about what you're going through about mental health, and how to respond when someone tells you something about their mental health. And the San Jose State chapter started about 5 years ago, and it was actually started by a student. And any school, like high school, college, four-year university, community college, can start their own club. And I know for each school has their own process of creating a club, but Active Minds have resources for students who want to create their own chapter within their school, and it's all on their website too. So
awesome. Yeah, thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. I've heard, Active Minds, I feel like it's pretty popular in the Bay Area. So I feel like most high schools and colleges have a club on campus, which is really great. Speaking of colleges, what can colleges do better to address the mental health needs of students?
Yeah, so that's something really important, and I really care deeply about this. And I think one of the first things is definitely to provide more mental health services for students. For almost all CSU campuses in California, there's not enough counselors to meet the demand for mental health services for students. I remember my freshman year, I think we had about 8 sessions per academic year, and then they had to drop it down to 6 because there just wasn't enough. And I think mental health for students shouldn't be focused one day out of the year or 1 month out of the year, something that should be talked about like every single day. Like, it really should be taught to students to, recognize the signs of suicide, how to talk to someone who's experiencing, withdrawal, or, they're not feeling like themselves, and facilitating positive dialogue around mental health and letting students know it's okay not to be okay, because there's a lot of pressure on students. And even now, especially, I feel like especially more being in such a tech booming area, especially in the Silicon Valley, there's added pressure. And I believe that mental health should be openly discussed. And I had the great opportunity to actually take a mental health first aid about a year ago, and it was offered free at San Jose State. It's 8 hours, but it really goes by fast because it's really hands-on. You get to learn so much. So I believe that all members of a college or university should be required to take first aid training not first aid, sorry, mental health first aid training, because we have like first aid training, we have CPR training, and mental health is so important. Everyone has mental health. Not everyone has a mental health illness, but everyone has, mental health. And why is that something that should be taught to students, faculty, professors, staff of the university? And definitely knowing the signs of suicide is important, because we all know like suicide rates are pretty high around college students. And I believe college isn't just about like passing courses and earning a degree. It's really about receiving a great education. And that isn't just about pass this class. It's about, trying to prepare yourself for the future, entails like learning and discussing and finding care for your mental health.
Definitely. Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but I was going to say something on. I was going to say, just the changes in college. I just remember going through like so many changes, both mentally, like with friends, with relationships, with school. There's just so much going on that mental health, at least for me in undergrad, was never really like something that was at the forefront of my brain. But clearly, like, I think everyone, like you said, can benefit from talking to someone or just being mindful of your mental health during that time, because you never know what could come up. And I also would love to normalize puppy therapy. Great.
I think it was so great. It was so something that it was just, you didn't know you needed type of thing, And I think puppy therapy should be like at least once a week for all students. So I think that's a great idea. It's so easy to like, relieve your stress and kind of not care about everything that's like putting pressure on you. So it's really important.
Agree. I want to talk about the transition from college to being a young professional and finding a job. How has that changed for you?
Yeah, so currently I'm still in the process of finding a job. After graduation, I took like a few months off because I really wanted to focus on myself and not really jump into working. And then the pandemic hit. So now it's like a million times harder to find a job. But I did work before my last semester at San Jose State, and I was working full time, and it was really hard. I'm not gonna lie. I had about 2 weeks before my last final, and then I started my internship, and it was hard because it's 40 hours and you're just like, go, go, go. And then even on the weekend, it doesn't really feel like a weekend. It's like, it just feels like it's gone, and that was really something to get used to. But I think one great thing about transitioning to work life is with school, I felt like there's always something that was tugging you at the back of your mind, like, oh, maybe I should start on this reading, or maybe I should start on this assignment. But when you start working, you don't really have that. So I had a lot of flexibility with my job. So once it was like 5:30 p.m., I clocked out, like I was done. I didn't think about work. I tried not to think about work. I was like, you know what? Work will start tomorrow, the next day at 8 a.m. That's kind of one great thing about it. But because the weekends go by so fast, I think it's really important to maintain your mental health and find balance within it. And definitely practicing self-care and finding your me time is extremely important. And I think that really helped me with work-life balance, because going from school, that semester I only had like 3 days of school, and the rest days I just worked. But when you transition to work, it's 40 hours just work, and sometimes you even work more. So definitely adding space and time for just yourself is really important. I started watching The Office here and there, and then I really got into the Great British Baking Show. It was kind of like really soothing for me. Like eating out at your favorite restaurant by yourself, that's a form of self-care and me time. And even having a movie night by yourself with like endless amount of snacks and whatever you want to eat, you got to do you sometimes. And I think people think that it's selfish to think about yourself, or it's selfish to make time for yourself, but it's something that's so necessary, and that I think people really forget, because a lot of people are really giving and they think about other people and like, oh, like maybe I should help this person out or do this for this person. And then they forget about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of great things there. I think one, the sitting at the desk part of working, I think is a huge adjustment for people. And something I still struggle with is like actually taking breaks from your desk, just standing up and stretching. I think going outside for like a 5-minute walk can make a huge difference. And I think that sometimes we forget that we've like working all day is mentally draining, even if you're sitting somewhere. So it is important to like take time for yourself and do something for yourself. How do you think companies should address mental health for employees?
Yeah. So as I know, a lot of Bay Area companies provide almost 100% coverage for health insurance. And I think for some health insurance plans, mental health services don't really account for that. So sometimes there's extra charge. But I think because I think society is kind of changing a little bit, or improving with openly discussing mental health, I think companies should move with that movement as well, and provide benefits, or at least provide health insurance plans that allocate for mental health services as well. I know there's a company I was researching a few weeks ago, and they actually have like an app specifically made for that company's employees for mental health, which is a great step. But I also do believe like a mental health first aid is extremely important, not just for universities, but I think for working professionals, employers, organizations really should be trained on knowing the signs, knowing how to talk to people about different issues. Like we have, racial insensitivity training and workforce training and training on different softwares and tools, but why not mental health? Like that's something that's really important. And I think having lunch and learns is pretty common in the Bay Area for bigger companies. And why not have a lunch and learn about mental health and like resources that can help employees know that help is near, or help is right around the corner, or, being able to talk to employers and managers and have like positive dialogue regarding mental health, I think just is really important, because even now, like even with the pandemic, there's so much more pressure. There's lots of anxiety with elections, what's the fate of the US in the next, 6 months? And that's something that's much more elevated now. So I think it's really important for companies to openly discuss mental health and be there for their employees.
Definitely. And I think I've even seen studies before where it shows like productivity is so much higher for companies that actually address mental health and provide the resources for employees. So I think that's just something important to note, because it's for the benefit of the company, honestly, to provide the mental health resources to their employees. So what advice would you give to a current college student or young professional experiencing anxiety or going through a tough transition right now?
Yeah, so I definitely think the first step is acknowledging that you're not feeling like yourself. Sometimes we are so transitioned to go with emotions, like, oh, like I'm feeling sad, but I have so many other things to do. So let me like work on those things, and then I can kind of focus on myself later. But we put ourselves on the back burner. I think that's really important to recognize, like, hey, I'm not doing okay. Let me take some time for myself. Let me see if I need to talk to someone or find resources. So that's kind of when your support group kind of comes in. I think it's really important to have people around you that you're comfortable talking with about what's going on, whether it's, you're not feeling like yourself, or you don't think you can like get out of bed. You think you need a mental health day from work. And I think, like I said, like the first part is definitely overcoming that hurdle of you don't want to sound like a burden or feel like a burden to someone. But after that, I think it becomes a lot more easier, and it's easier to open up to people. And there's a lot of resources in California that I know of. So I know like Active Minds, there's a lot of resources on how to recognize the signs, like if you're experiencing anxiety, general anxiety, social anxiety. Here are resources. There's also resources on how to talk to someone who's experiencing something. Like if one of your friends said like, hey, Avery, like I'm not feeling okay. It's called VAR, which stands for validate, appreciate, and refer. So first step is like validate their feelings, oh, thank you for sharing. I'm here for you. Appreciate that they're sharing it, because it is super daunting and really scary to share your experiences. And then also refer. That's the last step, which is, let's say for me, like, oh, this comedy podcast really helped me, or like this meditation app really helped me calm down my nerves or whatever. And then you can, refer them to that. Or if they need to talk to someone, you're there with them. If they need to speak with someone from like a hotline or anything. And NAMI, which is a great one for California, and Each Mind Matters. And I think it's important for people to realize that it takes a lot of courage and strength to talk about how you're feeling, how you felt in the past. And so definitely take time to be proud of yourself and thank yourself for being courageous and brave.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's some really great advice. So thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you personally, what is something, I know you mentioned like yoga that you do, and some other things, but is there something that you do every day to take care of your mental health?
Yes, journaling has helped me more than I can even imagine. After a very long hiatus, I'm finally back to my daily journal writing, and it really helps my mental state with like writing everything down, all of my thoughts, what I've been feeling, my fears, like what my future holds. It kind of just puts everything in one place, and it's kind of like everything I was feeling that one day. And if people are struggling with journaling, I know that's kind of like daunting. Sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know what to write about. There's a podcast from NPR called Life Kit, and I just listened to their podcast. It's like 13 minutes about how to start journaling. So
that's awesome.
I think that really helped. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sometimes that people recommend like journaling about gratitude, or what's the other thing? I guess just write down 3 things that made you like happy within the day.
Right.
Or so yeah, I think it's really cool that you can just just start writing and see where it takes you.
Right. Yeah.
You mentioned podcasts, and I'm curious, are there specific podcasts, either mental health or like comedy or something that you would recommend to young people?
Yes. So one of the first podcasts I ever listened to was, I listened to a lot of NPR ones. So How I Built This by Guy Raz. So that one's basically, he has like founders, CEOs of a lot of companies that we know of and some companies that we don't, talk about their experience on, you know, how they became an entrepreneur and what made them become who they are today. And I think for famous people, I know I used to do this when I was younger, like sometimes they don't really feel like us. They're like up there, they're like on a pedestal, like they're different, but all of these people, they go through everything that we've gone through. So the founder and creator of Ring Doorbell, so I listened to his, and he was at a really, really low point in his life because I think he didn't get funding for his product. So, you know, he didn't know what to do. And, you know, he fell into depression and he had anxiety and, you know, thoughts about the future. So everything we've experienced, all of us have experienced at some point in our life, like these people kind of experienced that. So it's really relatable in that sense. Another one is The Moth by NPR. So that one's a little bit, they have speakers, they tell little stories. So those kind of from like a variety of topics. So the one that I listened to was about fear, and they go from like anxiety. People talk about their depressive episodes. They talk about, you know, climbing Mount Everest or marriage, anything and everything. So it's kind of like, it's a great storytelling podcast where you kind of just, it's easily relatable.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I think, I know podcasts are kind of like the in thing right now. So I'm curious what people are listening to and if there's something that helps them. Mm-hmm. What's something positive that you found from having anxiety?
I'm not alone. So I think that was something that I never really thought about until, you know, just recently, that I think it's really common for people to think that, oh, you know, I'm alone, like that's why I don't want to reach out to people, or I just don't feel comfortable or anything. But I realized pretty late, but I'm still fortunate that I realized that there's a lot of people who have gone through what I've gone through, experienced it, and I'm so glad that I don't have to fight these battles alone. And I think that's really important for everyone to know, that you're never alone. There's always resources, there's always, you know, support groups, and people always will be willing to help.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think I want people to know, like, especially in the Santa Clara County community in Valley, there are, I think, I don't want to say more resources than other places, but we do have an abundance of mental health and behavioral health resources. So, and you can Google so many of them. And even on the To Be Honest website, we have a whole bunch listed. So, yeah, thank you. And now a fun question. Tell us something that you're looking forward to in the future, either personally or professionally, whatever you want to share.
I think, well, obviously the first one would be getting a job. I think there's a lot of job searching anxiety, and that's kind of like where my mental health is right now. Like I said, like I've tried my best trying not to compare myself to others, but it's still really, really hard. So trying not to focus too much on that, but trying to stay optimistic as I can. And the second thing is traveling. I love traveling. I love experiencing new cultures. And I honestly cannot wait to start again. You know, if it's not next year, then hopefully the year after. Like I already have a list of places that I want to see and, you know, places I want to be at, what I want to do. So I'm definitely ready for that.
Awesome. What, I know you mentioned before cosmetic engineering was kind of what you wanted to do. Is that still something you're hoping to do?
I think now my focus is probably working at a cosmetic company. I just think the cosmetic industry is just something that's so booming. It's kind of always going to be in there. And I feel like when I was in high school, like my senior year, I had trouble with my skin, and that was kind of something that gave me clarity in a way. So I really kind of felt like myself. And even now when I'm feeling really down, or I'm having just one of those days that I don't feel like myself, I'm super sad, I'll just, put on makeup, I'll do my eyeshadow, I'll have a little photo shoot by myself, because I feel like it kind of just like elevates my mood a little bit. And I think it's such a great form of expression that I just want to be a part of a company that like allows people to express themselves in every single way,
What are the top places on your list of traveling once traveling's a little more safe?
Yeah, so definitely Portugal. I don't really know why that kind of like popped in my head. Brazil, because I watched this Brazilian Netflix series. I forgot the name of it, but it's basically about this woman. She moves from Sao Paulo to Rio to start like her own restaurant, like where artists can sing. Oh, bar, more of a bar where artists can sing. So, and in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. So that's kind of, I was like, I want to go to Portugal. Like, I think that'll be so great.
Yeah.
But definitely Bali as well.
Oh, yes.
So
that
just trying to make like little tick marks on countries that I want to go to.
I'm in the same boat. I'm like, I wish I could travel abroad right now, but all in good time, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be worth the wait.
Exactly.
So that's what I keep thinking about. It's worth the wait.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. Is there anything that you wanted to promote, or is there a place that people can find you to learn more about who you are?
Yeah, so I have like a semi-professional website. It's amandkaur.com. I have Instagram, which is amykaur_, and you can totally add me or follow me on LinkedIn, which is Aman Kaur. It has my picture of graduation, so hopefully someone can recognize me. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think your experience is super relatable, and I greatly appreciate all the advice that you gave to our listeners. So thank you. I hope we can chat again soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you so much for having me. I just want to say I am so thankful that I was scrolling through Instagram a few weeks ago and I saw an ad. I was like, this sounds so cool. And I absolutely love that you have this podcast, because sometimes like it can be daunting to reach out for help. And this is kind of like another route that people can take to learn about different experiences. So thank you so much for having this podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being one of our guests. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you were able to join us for the whole episode, thank you so much for listening. We are so grateful to have you and hope you choose to keep listening as we continue to share stories from youth and young adults in Santa Clara County. If you would like to learn more about To Be Honest and our podcast, please visit tobehonest.today. Our website has everything from mental health education to an online screening tool, resources, and so much more. And if you are interested in being a guest on the podcast and would like to share your own experience with behavioral health, please email us at tbh.today@gmail.com. We also have all of this information in the show notes, so we hope to talk to you soon. Bye. See you soon. Bye. See you soon. Bye. See you soon.